Hello, everyone, and welcome to the October meeting of the Gender Equity Commission. We're so glad you're joining us if you're with us online, and hello to all of our wonderful commissioners who are joining us. We are once again meeting here virtually, and we do invite public participation in these meetings. We would love to hear from you. If at any point during today's meeting you'd like to get in touch with us, please feel free to email us at our email address, which is genderequity@pittsburghpa.gov. And I'll say that one more time, genderequity@pittsburghpa.gov. And we do invite you to submit comments, feedback. You can always submit questions ahead of time. We do set aside time at the beginning and the end of all of our commission meetings for public input. So please feel free to get in touch with us. Today's meeting is being live streamed on the city's site. Commissioners, I remind you, we are live and we are being recorded. Today's meeting. And of course, the recording of this meeting and the meeting minutes will be available on our website. So please do get in touch with us. Before we launch into any business today, and before I even take roll, we have to hold some elections. We've got an open seat on the executive committee for our secretary role, and I know our Governance and Leadership Development Committee has been hard at work twisting arms and finding us somebody who would like to fill in the secretary role for the next couple of months. And we need to attend to that business before we do anything else. So Sabrina, can I turn it over to you?
Yeah, no arm twisting, just love and kindness. That's all that's occurred. Yeah, so thank you, Jesse. I appreciate that. I wanted to let the commission know that one of our new commissioners, well, first let me back up. I had not heard any, I had requested that anyone who was interested in filling the secretary position to reach out to me following our previous commissioner meeting. And I had not heard from anyone, and we did informally speak with a few folks. And so I did reach, after speaking with the executive committee in more detail, I did reach out to one of our new commissioners, Commissioner Hall, and spoke with her about the position of filling the interim secretary role, which is for the remainder of October, November, and December. And we will talk later about how other positions will be opening up after that. But with great kindness and generosity, Allison has agreed to fill the temporary position if the commission supports that, which I hope that we all do, and I would highly recommend that we do. And then in order to help her transition, she and I will both be taking notes during the meeting today and comparing those to make sure that she feels comfortable going forward with how that feels for the minutes. So just to notify anybody. So I'm not sure if I have to do a motion for that, Jesse. I believe I would present that in the form of a motion.
I think that's right.
Okay. So as the chair of the Governance and Leadership Committee, which from time to time handles the nomination of folks from our commission to fill positions, I would like to put forth to the commission Commissioner Allison Hall as the individual that would fill the opening for secretary on an interim basis for the months of October, November, and December. And I would ask for a second.
Second.
Okay. Lee has seconded that. And thank you to the committee for working on this. Allison, thank you for agreeing to put your name forward. We'll do this by simple vote rather than secret ballot, since this is a motion. And obviously, when we hold our regular elections and have a slate, we'll handle that via sealed ballot. So we've got a motion on the floor to take up our interim secretary. Again, thank you so much, Allison, for being willing. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? Okay, thank you. Allison, thank you for is abstaining on her own vote. The motion carries. We have a new interim secretary. Allison, again, thank you so much and welcome. We really appreciate you stepping in.
Well, Sabrina's going to hold my hand.
It's a partnership. We're doing it as a partnership, and we're very lucky that Allison is willing to sort of take this leap and and figure out whether she likes doing this. So thank you.
Welcome to the executive committee. We're
Thank
glad to have you on board. And Sabrina, thank you again so much for that help. Okay, now we will sort of gavel in and get started. Let's do make sure we know who's here. This helps when you all are writing up your minutes as well. So let's just take roll here quickly. Commissioner Coffey is not with us today. Commissioner Fogarty is here. Commissioner Gross, I don't see. Commissioner Hall is with us. Commissioner Hanson.
Here.
Commissioner Higginbotham. I don't see her yet. Commissioner Corbel with us. Commissioner Manuel. I'm just making sure nobody else has popped in. Commissioner Nietrauer. There you are. Commissioner Overton.
Here.
Commissioner Schultz. Sarah here. Don't see Commissioner Schultz. Commissioner Strelick. And Commissioner Walker. And Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Is here. All right, great. Good to see all of you. I think we may have some others popping in. And Anu, thank you for your help in getting people into the meeting if they're stuck like some of us were. We appreciate your help. Do we have any public testimony, Anu, that we ought to be reading here at the top of the meeting? No, nothing?
I have not received anything.
Okay, thanks for letting us know. We have no finalized minutes from September, so we're going to need to look at the September minutes and the October minutes together in November, that part of our transition to new leadership. So Allison will work with you and make sure that we've got some draft minutes, but they were not finalized in the leadership transition. And I don't want to present to you a draft version of minutes. We should be voting on finalized minutes. So we'll have to approve those. It looks like we actually don't have quorum right now, so we wouldn't be able to approve those anyway. So we will do both minutes next month. We have some guests joining us today, and I'm very excited because I actually see our mayor is with us. Mayor Peduto, welcome, welcome. We're so glad to have you with us, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Jesse, and thanks to the commissioners that are with us today. I just wanted to pop in to say hello, just to be able to answer some questions and just to, let you know what else is happening within the city and how your work is critically important. I think everybody understands that we are at an historic moment where there is more of a willingness to make systemic change than there has been for close to 40 years. And we have this incredible opportunity and a responsibility in order to bring what could be incredible change to people's lives. You may have read yesterday the report from the task force on police reform. They took a broad approach to looking at the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police. One of the findings that was absolutely critical is we really don't have the access to data to be able to make informed decision making, that it lacks real-time ability, and that it isn't done in such a way that really recognizes where disparity exists in how we enforce the law. So there's going to be some background work that's beginning right now in order to be able to bring about the other changes that the reports call for. At that same time, we've been experimenting with about a dozen other cities in a guaranteed basic income program, and we'll be announcing the details of that. But I wanted to share with you that we're using your report from last year as the baseline. So as we look to provide 200 Pittsburghers with $500 a month for the next 2 years, we'll be studying the effects on African-American women. We will have 100 of the participants chosen as African-American female heads of households, and we'll use a control group of 100 other people from around the city. And we'll be using the research that you did in where the greatest disparities exist and looking at whether we can make a change within 2 years through a guaranteed basic income system. Basically, these women will be given a debit card every month with $500 added to it. And we'll be working with the University of Tennessee and University of Pennsylvania, together with cities as big as Los Angeles and as small as Union, New York, to see how that will affect change when people have the ability to have direct cash and not a specific program. Our goal is very simple. If we can show that it works across this country, then we have a better case of looking at universal basic income across this nation on a federal standard. And then finally, your report itself. I mean, it has become the position and the platform of much of the discussion around inequity in the city, and more importantly, around race. It has been the basic report that has been able to clearly define where the disparity exists and to what degree. And now it's time to work with you on the next phases of it, identifying the key issues, identifying the key programs and policies that are needed to change in order to get there, and then allowing city government to find the critical partners to be able to finance it and to provide the background services that may be required as well, that may fall out of the expertise of local government. Like I said, when I started this conversation, there has never been a better time. The door is wide open. I just had a 30-minute conversation with the president of Huntington Bank today, and she is on board with trying to work with us to support our Avenues of Hope program that will invest in minority and women-owned businesses in 7 neighborhoods that need it the most. And we'll be looking in those neighborhoods to find entrepreneurs. We've already got PNC Bank involved in it. And a lot of these problems that we've tried to do and solve by ourselves for decades, we never were able to be successful. We now have the critical partners in order to be able to have some success. So what I would ask of you is continue in the work that you have begun. Utilize the report that you've provided Pittsburgh as a guideline of where we need to be doing better, and offering your professionalism and expertise in coming up with the ideas of programs and projects around it to address through a timeline the areas of the greatest disparity. I think that if we stay focused on that, if you provide the third-party independent viewpoint, we can then work through city government to bring the critical partners on board to make it happen. But we have this window of opportunity, and that window may not stay open very long. So I ask for your help in putting that together as soon as you can, at least with the greatest needs and the strongest priorities of this commission.
Thank you, Mayor. Boys, it is exciting to hear about the Universal Basic Income project as well. Are you able to stay with us for a couple of minutes and maybe take some questions if folks have some?
Yeah, just let me start with that one though. This was a program, my friend who is the mayor of Stockton, California, Mayor Tubbs, started. And he began it a couple of years ago, when they created it, everyone said, this is a waste. People are just going to use their money on cigarettes and alcohol. And they were right. 1% of the money spent went to cigarettes and alcohol. The other 99% went to paying the rent. It went to buying a utility. It went to paying utility bills. The money was used in ways that actually had a direct effect on changing people's lives. And they've been able to show it because of the research that had been done with those two universities. And then they offered us the opportunity to join with them. You know, now the one criticism I'm getting is, why are you using taxpayers' money in this way? I can't use taxpayers' money. I can't take tax money and then give it to people. It's not legal. So all the money that we're looking to invest, we have to raise through foundations and corporations and those that believe in a basic income is a most effective way of bringing about change. But what makes ours unique is your report. Your report is the only one like it out of any of the cities that are participating in it. It has allowed us to target in on African-American women.
So you said there's 200 folks will be in that initial round, and fully half of them will be Black women,
Yes,
single heads of households.
yes. And then
Commissioner?
comparing and looking at whether there are opportunities and what the differences may be so that a program can be tailored toward African-American women, since that's where the greatest disparity exists.
Are there questions from commissioners for Mayor Peduto? Amanda, I see your hand, and you're muted, of course.
Hey, there we go. I've been doing that a lot lately. I think it's Freudian. Hi, Mayor. How are you?
Amanda, it's good to see you.
You too. I guess my question for you is, I know that you talked about the commission more broadly and you know, how you would like for us to continue to support. I would like to know, what are probably the biggest initiatives or the major points of what your administration is trying to achieve right now, where you feel the commission could be of greatest support, or perhaps areas that you would like us to perhaps focus on, you know, at this time? I mean, because we can continue to support and continue to research and continue to go out there and bring you ideas and advocate. But is there a particular, or are there particular areas or things that your administration is doing right now or in the immediate future that you feel we could best support you on right now?
Yep, there is. And it goes back to that saying, you have to strike when the iron is hot. Right now, it is based upon all of the ideas of Black Lives Matter. It is the understanding that the narrative about police brutality is part of it, but it's a small part. If you go into any of the predominantly Black neighborhoods in the city of Pittsburgh right now, and you say, what is the priority? People are going to say jobs, when we need good paying jobs, not entry-level service industry jobs. And we need to have our young men trained into positions that are careers. We need to have police not beating up our grandchildren, but we want to have police in our neighborhoods, and we want to see them the same as people in Shadyside and Squirrel Hill see them, and not just reporting for crimes. There is a very broad narrative, and it is all based around real disparity, where there is a difference between the life of somebody who is Black in Pittsburgh and somebody who's white in Pittsburgh. And so any of the issues that you can draw that show where the disparity exists with women, and then it is expounded by race, right now, that's where our priority will be. And if you can come up with ideas of how we can lessen it, create pilot programs, we can administer it and we can find the resources. And like I said, the iron is hot means that I don't have to look just at the city budget, that I can ask the Hillman Foundation, or I can go to Giant Eagle, or I can go to any of the institutions in the city, UPMC, Allegheny Health Network, Pitt, Carnegie Mellon, and ask for them to partner. And right now, people are saying yes, like they never have before. So I would say take the mission of this commission, which is finding and recognizing where there is disparity based upon gender, and expand it at this moment to find out where it's exponential upon race, concentrate on Black women in the city of Pittsburgh. And as John F. Kennedy said, a rising tide raises all boats. If we can help women who need the most help right now, it will also help the women who are in positions of power.
Thank you.
I have one quick follow-up. Sorry. So I want to ask this and also kind of put this out there too. We want to make sure that we're helping and supporting individuals to thrive. And on the flip side, the people in power also need to make sure that I want to put this out there both as an ask and as a consideration. Should we also think about putting forth ideas and opportunities for the people in power to change the way that they do things? So it's a both and, so it's identifying these are the needs and these are what we need the systems and the power holders to change in order for us to both support the people who and giving them the resources, but also make systemic change.
Yep.
So I guess it's both a request and an ask of focusing on from both sides. That makes sense.
And I would look at it as by institution. Those in power in government need to do X, Y, and Z. Those in power of corporate need to do, those in power of nonprofit organizations need to be able, and basically instead of presenting it just as, one organization, thinking a little bit more strategically at what each type of institution needs to do. The other thing, and I should have mentioned this earlier, is anything that you are providing in the case of, I'll just keep calling it programs, policies, and projects, will get special emphasis if it can check several boxes. So if we want to promote women entrepreneurs in underserved neighborhoods, and you're concentrating on early childhood education and how a daycare center can become a pre-K learning center, and what's needed in order to do that to meet state code, where you have to have a double metal sink and a fence around the yard and all these things that keep some of those daycare centers from actually becoming early education centers. If you can do that, promote the women who are running these businesses, help to make it so that there's programs in effect to allow them to get the resources they need to be able to do that, that will be looked at with a lot more interest than just women entrepreneurs. Not that women entrepreneurs won't be looked at, but if you can make it so that $1 is actually solving 3 problems, we're very interested.
Yeah, thank you. Other commissioner questions? I saw some of you half raising hand. Morgan, were you about to ask a question? It looked like you were.
Yeah, Amanda and I were on the same wavelength. So thank you, Mayor, for clarifying that. I just wanted to know, what were the feasible directions, and if you could be, I dream of Jeannie and just snap your fingers really quick, and you believe that the commission has, the authority and jurisdiction to be able to do some of the things that you mentioned, what would it be? But you already kind of mentioned it, so thank you.
Yeah, I would say it's on two levels. I mean, the first is there are those that are caught in the continuing cycle of poverty and trying to figure out ways to break that cycle so that they have the opportunity to give their children maybe something that they were not given. And then the second one would be on the stuff, talking with Amanda on where there are not opportunities to women in the city that would be made available to a man or is more readily available if you're white, and just trying to equalize the field when it comes to economic opportunity. And, I would listen to any of the issues that you guys have brought up. You have made it a priority in the report where healthcare and access to equal healthcare is a priority that we're failing in this city. From the report, I've met with R.K. Mellon and McGee Women's Hospital in order to be able to create a program at least through pregnancy and childbirth to lessen our numbers. And R.K. Mellon is now funding that. So I just wanted to be able to say to you, I get beat up by that report all the time. On social media, people will be like, "Did you read this report?" I'm like, "Yeah." I had a press conference to say it's real, that you cannot say that racism doesn't exist. It can be quantified. These are numbers that show it. But at that same time, it's a useful document in helping to get others on board to address these issues. So I would ask, going back through it, creating timelines, creating benchmarks, looking where your priorities are. And we look forward to working with you with it. What we provide is the rest of city government. Anu is that bridge. And she is able to then get to the resources of each of the different departments. And by having her in the mayor's office, I can then utilize it in order to be able to find funders and sponsors.
Thank you so much. Any other questions before we have to respect our mayor's time?
I think Dan's joining too. So I think he'll be able to hang on for a little bit longer before I get on my next one.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Just listening.
Yep. Well, you get the real information with him plus the real time information. But I just wanted to stop on to say thank you. I really didn't want to do a lecture today. I just, you basically were all given a blank slate and said, here's a new commission, do something. You did it, I think, the right way, in that you went out and you got the data and you got the research and you put that as the basis of being able to make decisions. And it's very hard to argue when you have that, especially when somebody is armed with nothing. And like I said earlier, within our police task force, what they found is they didn't have data. So now we have to start going back and getting that data starting yesterday. So utilize it, use it as the way of showing this is where we need to move with housing. This is where we need to move with healthcare. This is where we have to move with education, and then start creating the benchmarks to hold ourselves all accountable to doing it.
We have our work cut out for us, everybody.
You do, but realize the great opportunity that you have. You actually get to have the first voice in what it will look like. A more equal Pittsburgh.
Yes, back to our building an equitable new normal, right? Our title of our recommendations.
Right, build back better.
We appreciate that.
Okay, I'm gonna hand it off to Dan, and just to talk about any of the other initiatives. Dan, I talked a little bit about guaranteed basic income and the avenues of hope, but I thought you could talk about some of the other parallel initiatives that this commission will be asked to work on.
Terrific.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Chief, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you, Dr. Ramey. Good to be here.
Is there anything you'd like to talk with us about? Or are you joining us for the meeting? You tell us how you'd like us to use your time. How's that?
If you're willing, I'd love to expand on just some of the other things going on, but some updates and kind of focus just to, I heard the questions from Amanda and from Morgan too, so that you can listen to where we're currently focusing a lot of time, effort, and money, and then put the gender and the equity lens to magnify it. So we generally been talking about our, response to this unique moment, and I think the mayor opened with that. I mean, to have this type of the global pandemic, the complete economic collapse, and the next phase of the American Civil Rights Movement hit within 3 months. You couldn't write a book if you tried to without seeming like science fiction, but it's what's before us. And, with every great crisis comes great opportunity. And we do have a unique opportunity, as the mayor said, from public support to financial support from others. When you have banks announcing multi-billion-dollar commitments to equity and things of that nature, there is an opportunity. So we've really kind of focused in 5 general themes from an economic development URA standpoint. The mayor talked about GBI and avenues of hope, so I won't touch on those. The third is parks equity. We're going to be doubling down our effort, both between COVID has shown the importance of the parks, environmental health and inequitable environmental health in the city has shown the importance of parks. Childhood obesity has shown the importance of parks, and there's a significant racial equity component in childhood obesity numbers to underlying pre-existing health conditions. Numerous reasons we need to double down our efforts. And we're going to be doing that. Incredibly proud of the work we've done this year. The study now a year and a half ago by the Parks Conservancy on equity in parks showed the worst park or the park in the need of most investment, I should say it that way, was Baxter Playground in Homewood. We just cut the ribbon last week on a brand new Baxter Playground. We've tackled work in the Hill District. Just won a grant for Fowler, which is in kind of the Perry South Manchester, right by Pittsburgh project quadrant of the north side. Money in the budget for Sheridan and Kennard next year. $13 million committed to the new Homewood Park. It'll be the most significant investment in a park in at least the last 100 years or so of the city, which will transform the border of Homewood to the busway in Point Breeze. And we're looking to increase significant funding there. Both there is the tax initiative that was passed, but also from corporate and foundation partners on that. The fourth one I'll talk about is very bureaucrat and technocrat, but really important, and that is a CDFI that the URA is creating called Invest PGH. Some of you may have seen that PNC committed $10 million to help us launch our new CDFI. This is the anchor of how we invest in affordable housing. It's also the combination with Avenues of Hope of the anchor of how we invest in Catapult, which is our MWBE business incubator for minority women, partnering with Circles and Tammy Thompson on that. Penn Avenue is the first location. We hope to be, quote unquote, breaking ground. It's an existing building, but on our second location, which will be on Center Avenue in the Hill District. And with the funding from PNC Bank, as well as what the mayor's put in the budget, we now are able to really expand, looking at the Hilltop for a third location and more. And we're just about to announce the next class of women going into the Penn Avenue Catapult. So that's going to be a really important part of the work. And then the last one is our Office of Community Health and Safety. It is essential that we talk about reimagining policing in the 21st century. And our focus for that, in addition to the report and many other aspects, is really rethinking what a police officer's job is and what we need them for in society. There's a great story I read recently by, I want to say it's the Brooklyn Borough president. I may have my Burrow, who is African-American male, talking about running for mayor of New York, who had 35, 40 years on the job of NYPD. And he had a great thing on CNN about how basically you would never ask the same doctor to be an orthopedic surgeon, a brain surgeon, and a great pediatrician. And that's exactly what we ask of police officers. How you expect someone to, be the responder to an active shooter and be an expert on traffic control and be an expert in domestic violence and also know how to respond to a protest and it is crazy. And we have continued to throw things on police as a society and as we've cut funding for mental health, as we've cut funding for affordable housing, as we've cut funding for addiction, as we've closed public facilities for those, homelessness, and even, as the city, we're guilty of it. We don't pay building inspectors and things like that at night. So if Dr. Ramey is continually annoyed and calling Councilman Gilman saying that the dumpster at the apartment building across the street is being emptied at 4 a.m., which, by the way, is a very common complaint in this city, our answer to you is call 911. That's what we do. Who else works at 4 a.m. to do that? If you leave for work at 3:30 for your nursing shift and a car is blocking your driveway, you call 911. If you are a shop owner and a homeless person is sleeping out in front of your store and you need help getting them to move so you can open, you call 911. That is a failure on us as a society and as a government. And so we really are going to dig in with this new office, Community Health and Safety, which includes LEAD, which is our pre-arrest diversion program that we're piloting right now on the north side and we'll be expanding citywide. It's our partnership with AHN to have kind of a co-responder model similar to Cahoots, not exactly the Cahoots model, but for people who've looked at that in AHN, and that's piloting zones 1, 2, and 5 right now. And the mayor's donating old ambulances to them and going to have actual AHN mental health professionals responding and being part of our street outreach teams, doing work, some really amazing work by Laura Jagowski on drug overdose and work within heroin and data tracking and the leave behind for naloxone. So some exciting work there and really important on that. Next, wanted to just give an update on a few things that are happening now. Today, City Council passed the mayor's bill, the Crown Acts, passed unanimously in front of City Council today on the mayor's introduction. So happy and appreciate council support. And we now have that signed into law, actually signed it into law technically a couple minutes ago. Jordan, who I think is on the call, has been doing incredible work with Hirsch on going through the city code. There's about a 90-page bill she's written with Hirsch on gendered language within city code, which we'll be introducing soon, which is important and a huge undertaking. One of those things everyone's talked about, but no one's found the time to do. So I appreciate Jordan and Anu and Hirsch tackling that effort. We are in the middle of looking at some expansions on paid sick leave. That one, as you all know, and Dr. Ramey and I have talked about, is certainly has to be done very, very carefully so as to not provide any opportunity to try to reopen the Supreme Court case with the opponent. I will just add a note, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, the judge who struck down Governor Wolf's orders on COVID gatherings, he's a federal judge now. When he was a private attorney, he's the one who sued the city on paid sick leave. So he's been a clear champion on public health and safety from the start. But we are looking at some expansion related to COVID with the paid sick leave, working closely with some outside partners on that. Doing work on bathrooms in city facilities, starting to build out soon, construction on the new first floor of the city county bathroom, which has important gender neutral facilities in it as well. Continuing to expand the Dolly Parton project, our book initiative for kids 0 to 5 has been unbelievably successful, as well as our food initiative in city parks. We have served over 250,000 free meals since March 17th from the city to seniors and children in need with food insecurity, which is really incredible. And that's not the city's job. We don't do food service. We aren't trained in that. And the fact that our city parks team picked it up and figured it out is really a remarkable accomplishment. And we are incredibly proud of that work. We did $500,000 in direct assistance to undocumented residents in partnership with Casa San Jose and others, as well as the Open Society Foundation, the Latino Community Center, and a few others. When the feds cut them out, we stepped in with $500,000. We would like to figure out how to expand that program, and Lindsay Powell is heading up that attempt right now. And we're putting the final touches on appointing the LGBTQIA+ commission. We've put it into code. We had the open call for nominees, and we are just finalizing some decisions on appointments to that to get that into code as well. And I will stop there. I could go on because we have an absolutely amazing team of people who have done incredible work. Anu and Jordan can tell you, when we do our mayor's office calls, it's really inspiring as we go around the quote unquote room and listen to each person talk about what they're doing. I would put our record up against any city in America in what we have done since COVID started in service to the public. But at the same time, as we know, we have so much work to do, and we look to you for the assistance, the guidance, the direction of where an equity lens, both gender and of course magnified by gender and race, comes into play. When we have these conversations, we know you have to look in the mirror before you look at other people, but reality is, human nature is sometimes it takes someone putting the mirror in front of your face too. That's just natural human process. And so having people like the Gender Equity Commission or the LGBTQIA+ Commission or EORC and others sometimes hold that mirror up and say, hey, don't forget to look over here, is really, really important. And as the mayor said, that was the gender equity report. Nobody thought there wasn't gender bias in Pittsburgh. Nobody thought there wasn't racism. Nobody thought there wasn't direct impact from it. But this was a big old mirror put in front of everyone's face saying, look at this first every day. And so that's really guiding a lot of the work that we're doing right now.
Thank you so much, Chief. So much of what you just described also aligns with all of the recommendations in our policy recommendations piece that we released in June. So we really appreciate hearing all of these efforts that are happening within the city. I know that we are running a little bit behind schedule, but we've got Chief with us, so I want to give commissioners an opportunity to ask any questions you might have. We've also got a couple of folks from the Coro program with us who are, I see you both waiting to present to us, and I know we have lots of business as well. But are there questions from commissioners, things you'd like to ask Chief Gilman right now? I see Allison.
Hello, Chief Gilman. Just kind of to follow back on something that the mayor brought up when in the report about the health disparities, given that there are, two major hospital systems here, curious to know, the government can obviously get involved, but I guess I look at, what are they doing to really embrace this issue? I mean, because it's really kind of, theirs, I don't want to say theirs to fix, but yet it should be a priority for them. So I'm just curious as to, how they reacted and what have they, if anything, have they done to date?
It's a very good question. As the mayor said, I think the most obvious one is the work McGee's doing with Stanford University and with RK Mellon around infant mortality numbers. That is the most obvious. And the McGee Women's Research Foundation is an incredible partner and kind of very separate from the politics of UPMC and AHN and Highmark. They really operate pretty freely from that and have been doing pretty remarkable research, partnering somewhat with us, but more with the foundations. UPMC also, we are, I'm hoping, close to a pretty substantial and massive announcement of some commitments UPMC wants to make without saying too much, really focused around affordable housing and looking at housing as a social determinant of health. I think there's also a financial benefit to UPMC with some of these things, and it reducing emergency room visits and other. There are some bottom lines, but I'll help their bottom line if it helps the community. So UPMC's focus has really been heavily on the social determinants of public health through housing and a little bit food access and food equity, but mostly housing. I don't want to say AHN has not. I don't think that would be fair, but I can't say that we have been as directly engaged with their response to it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Amanda?
Yes. Hey, Chief Gilman, how you doing?
I'm great, Amanda. Nice to see you.
Thanks, you too. So I have a so I guess it's one question, a two-parter. You know, I can never just ask a simple question. Sorry about that. So this actually has to do with a lot of the investment going into areas that have been historically underserved, that are generally have concentrated areas of Black Pittsburghers, et cetera. I really do appreciate all the investment that's going in there. And so my two-part question to you is, what, if anything, has the administration, URA leadership, et cetera, doing to ensure that these areas, while they're being invested in, that there's long-term thought given to allowing the people who are there now to enjoy the upgrades and aren't pushed out? And then the second part of that is, I do appreciate that organizations, Black-led, Black women-led organizations, are being invested in because of their work in the areas. And I appreciate that their leadership is being recognized. My question is, since their services and programs are being used at this moment, what are, if there are any plans to ensure that it's not a situation where they're used for their services and then forgotten about later? Are there any long-term plans to see how the good work that they're doing can be further supported and sustained, since they're being utilized now? So that's kind of my related two-parter.
Yeah, let me start with the first one because it's the easier one. In that I think they're a really good answer to what we are doing. I mean, probably a couple of points. Number one is the solution to that is leading with housing first. And housing has multi-prongs: affordability, home ownership, existing homeowner assistance programs. Those are the key assets. So as you see investment in Homewood or on Larimer Avenue, or actually the best example will be Hazelwood, where there's been substantial work to help existing homeowners stay in their homes in Hazelwood, because speculators walk around the neighborhood knocking on the door, seeing what's happening at Hazelwood Green and thinking the cash is coming one day. So helping people stay in their homes now. There's been real dollars from the URA and also the foundation partners in getting some affordable housing through Hazelwood Initiative locked in, not to mention our 9% tax credit for Gladstone School and our RFP on with Action Housing on Irvine Street. So if you lead with housing and you create that housing stability, we think that will allow people to stay and not only stay, but also build multi-generational wealth from having the asset of homeownership in a community. One of the greatest gentrifying factors in Pittsburgh has actually not been rental markets, not that that doesn't exist, but it has been homeowners who have owned homes often for many years, sometimes multi-generation, and someone knocks on their door and says, I'll give you 150, 300, whatever thousand if you're out by the end of the month. And when you paid $13,000 for that home in 1956, you'll take that 180 and walk tomorrow. And we're forcing people out of their homes with that, even more than just the rental market costs. And you've seen that a lot, particularly in Lawrenceville and Bloomfield and kind of area around Children's Hospital, more than anywhere. So helping people do that is really important. The second is the ability to age in place is also very important, and we don't have that. So investment in senior housing, accessibility improvements is an important part of that as well. You see a lot of seniors retire to the suburbs because that's where facilities and housing and one-story homes and homes with first-floor bathrooms and all kinds of other factors exist even more in the city. So that's been a focus that's important to it. At the same time, I think it's really important that we recognize in a lot of our neighborhoods that haven't seen investment, what we've had substantially in this city is Black flight to the suburbs because of the lack of third places, whether that's schools, obviously has to be talked about there, but also libraries, parks, community centers, churches, whatever the assets and third places are. So in terms of allowing people to live in the community that they are in now and not being forced out by investment and growth, is providing third places and the support services that families need and want in their own neighborhood. The second question is actually a really good one, and one I would turn back to you, Amanda, and ask for more direction and help on, because I think it's something we probably aren't giving enough thought to. There is certainly some, you hope, sustainable business practice building coming through this, whether it's we're working on a new partnership where some large construction firms will form JVs with minority firms, and the minority firm will take 51%, though the white firm will have more money in it. It's a capacity building to build skill sets and growth to allow them to GC larger government projects. So that should help, I think, on some of the minority contracting. But again, probably a huge gender disparity when it comes to contractors who would participate in the program. We have some work coming to support some small women-led firms in the architecture sphere that we're trying to work on, particularly in the Hill District. So I can think of one-offs, but in terms of really a systemic, thoughtful approach to the long-term sustainability, I think that's something we need to give a lot more thought to, and I'd love to pick your brain on.
Thank you, Chief. I hate to wrap up a conversation when we've got both the mayor and the chief with us, but I am paying attention to the time, and we have 4 committees that have to report and our Coro fellows with us. So with your permission, Chief, I'm going to move the meeting on.
Please, it's
Really
great to be here with everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
We welcome
Appreciate
you.
having you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Super appreciate that. And of course, if commissioners have follow-up questions, I'm sure we could route those through Anu, and we can have some more conversation or discussion as needed. If you are a committee chair, pay attention to the time. I think we're going to have to suck up all of our timeframes. I thank you for your patience. Let me put it that way. Thank you to everybody for your flexibility today. We've got 2 folks with us from the Coro program. I'm so delighted to have you with us. This is probably shortening your time with us as well, but thank you again for being here. And Commissioner Williams, are you going to make some introductions? Would you like to?
Yes, I would.
This for us?
And I'm going to be very short. Because the mayor and Chief Gilman really mentioned everything that this project is about. We started with the equity indicators. We've moved to having our gender analysis, and during that same time, we were working with the UN Sdgs and getting that together locally to actually, I guess, act locally, but it's a global actual framework. And we were working on this for the last couple of years. We partnered with a couple organizations and nonprofits, and we decided to work with Coro because of the Coro Fellow program. And we have 2 dynamic ladies who've made 3 presentations so far. And how do we engage the community with this, and how to educate people, and how to align the UN SDGs, which was adopted by the mayor last year, into moving to the voluntary local review that we're going to be releasing probably next week, and how we aligned our internal services and supports to that work, and how we're going to engage the different sectors that Chief Gilman and the mayor had already mentioned earlier a few minutes ago. So I'm not going to hold any time in kind of creating the stage a little bit more, but I'm going to let these 2 young ladies present what they have now and actually explain how the Gender Equity Commission can be aligned with this work as part of one of the UN SDGs, one of the most important UN SDGs out of the 17 in the framework, the sustainability goals. So with that said, I'm going to allow Amy and Priya to go ahead and do their presentation.
Thank you so much.
Can everyone see my screen? Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So it's interesting because the conversation we've been having from the start of this presentation really aligns to the conversation we had from the start of this meeting. So I'm really excited to talk to you all. If this will load.
And so while they're kind of putting that together, we talked about different frameworks and policies and protocols and programs. Well, the SDGs allow different type of sectors to roll into that framework their way and then be able to measure that. And this is one of the steps that they're going to mention in their presentation. Are you ready, Amy?
Yep, we're ready.
Okay, it's all yours.
Thank you. We hope everyone's staying healthy and safe during these times. We're here today to share some work of interdepartmental collaborations led by the Department of City Planning, the Mayor's Office of Equity, Commission on Human Relations, Gender Equity Commission of Pittsburgh, to share some key findings and recommended action steps from the work over the past few years. My name is Amy. I am from Los Angeles, California. I graduated with my master's in public administration from the University of Southern California.
Hi, my name is Priya. I'm from the Greater Philadelphia region. I have my bachelor's in neuroscience and I'm pursuing my master's in sustainable engineering, and I'm really happy to be here today.
So why are we here? We are here to discuss the Sustainable Development Goals framework and the voluntary local review tool, like Rick has said. We hope that these will assist in your ongoing work of addressing not only equity issues, but an entire range of Pittsburgh's needs today, especially during these times. We're looking forward to defining these terms, why they're important and relevant to Pittsburgh, what has been done so far, and how we can move forward.
So before we dive right in, I'm going to briefly touch on what has led to this presentation, as Mayor Peduto and several speakers here today have kind of touched on it. As you know, in 2016, the city began a series of collaborative research reports to investigate just how livable is the city of Pittsburgh and how that livability varies across the city for different populations. Those reports involved in-depth diagnostic work, as you know, by collaborating with over 2,000 residents of Pittsburgh, leading to some key findings, such as key strengths like geography and related natural resources, the nonprofit sector, educational institutions, just to mention a few. But these reports were also instrumental in identifying key stresses and shocks affecting Pittsburgh today. Stresses are long-term, slow-burning issues that overwhelm the capacity of city resources and erode resident well-being, while shocks are large-scale disasters that disrupt city services and threaten residents. So an example of a stress might be the ongoing health and economic inequities across race and gender, as well as fragmentation, which, if left unaddressed holistically, will continue to have negative impacts that will only be amplified when shocks occur. Recent examples from history of shocks include the Liberty Bridge fire, near decoupling and derailments of vehicles carrying hazardous materials in Oakland and Hazelwood, the closure of the steel industry, and the landslide cleanup of 2018, just to mention a few. And as we dig a little bit deeper, especially looking at the inequality across gender and race report in 2019 that was referenced several times today, we can identify areas of good performance in the city of Pittsburgh, but we can also, in looking at health and economic outcomes and educational outcomes, see key areas for improvement as well. So while these frameworks have been very useful for Pittsburgh in identifying these issues individually, the SDG framework is a little more useful in addressing them because SDGs advance the way we think about them. They address the intersectionality of these issues. So Amy, can you tell us a little bit about what the SDGs are?
Yes, so the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the UN SDGs, is a tool, a language, and a guide for addressing everything from ending poverty to financial empowerment, peaceful communities, and also fighting climate change. We want to emphasize that the SDGs do not only focus on environmental goals. So as nations and cities found that they were having similar problems, so they came together and addressed them to problem solve with the common language of SDGs to achieve collective impact. So the United Nations 200 plus member nations unanimously accepted and adopted the SDGs for being holistic and universal. And as of October 2019, Pittsburgh was the second city in the world to formally adopt the SDGs. So we simplified how SDGs can be applied at the local level just in 4 easy steps. The first step is engaging with SDGs by using them as a framework of thinking and mapping. This is an example of visualizing how the Gender Equity Commission directly and indirectly addresses the different SDGs through its initiative. This is an example based on our short time here, and definitely not an exhaustive list of all the work you have done. But it shows that it's a really simple way to map out how each project aligns with the SDGs. If you were able to add your work from the Inequality Across Race and Gender report, you may find that those reports alone may expand how much you contribute to the goals marked here and how many more goals you contribute to overall. As more organizations adopt this framework, it'll be easier to track and visualize partnership opportunities with organizations who have similar areas of focus, and even organizations that can help you address other SDGs. Here's another way of visualizing the chart data. I know it looks really scary, but don't worry, it's pretty understandable. As you can see, the Gender Equity Commission's work and the mission are very interconnected and aligned with several SDGs. When the mayor stepped in today and he gave an example of supporting women-owned businesses, I think we read his mind because we did that for you. We tackled 4 different SDGs and how they aligned with one another.
In fact, once cities and their stakeholders, such as the Gender Equity Commission, engaged with the SDGs internally and with each other, the data collected about your efforts can be compiled into something called a voluntary local review, or a VLR. So what is the VLR? It is a report that a city or regional government chooses to submit to the United Nations annually. It shows how a city makes the development goals more specific to its needs and establishes its baseline performance for each goal. Pittsburgh has committed to doing VLRs annually, and in fact completed its first VLR this summer. And as Rick mentioned, that report will be released this month. We recognize that this is an initial draft, as it is not as comprehensive as it could be, but it does begin the process of categorizing how policies, initiatives, and projects that are actively making Pittsburgh a better place to be contribute to each goal. Finally, the VLR also includes next steps for determining areas for improvement so effective action can be taken in response, such as conducting a gap analysis, promoting more engagement, such as that began this summer, and co-generating more data across the community.
So you must be wondering, so what? How can the SDG framework and the VLR report help government departments like the Gender Equity Commission? So the Sustainable Development Goals benefit your interactions and collaborations with 3 audiences. And first, we're going to focus on your respective constituents. I personally noticed that the work of Gender Equity Commission and just government's work in general is not always easily well known or easily understood. SDGs are an easy marketing tool that will help contextualize the initiatives in a relatable, grander vision through easy to understand icons and language. It makes your outcomes and vision clear to your constituents, which promotes engagement through your transparency. SDGs can also benefit your interactions with second audience, which is the stakeholders from private, nonprofit, and the philanthropy sectors. For example, it can help deal with the stress of fragmentation when addressing health and economic inequalities across race and gender. There are 90 distinct neighborhoods and over 3,000 nonprofits in the city of Pittsburgh. Many folks are working on service deliveries in parallel, sometimes duplicating or contradicting each other's efforts, but a universal adoption of the SDGs can lead to a better coordination of efforts and thus better outcomes. This is because SDGs can show how specific issues and initiatives relate to each other and broader goals. This can motivate a broader range of stakeholders to unite under a common cause to achieve collective impact. Additionally, Gender Equity Commission adopting the SDG framework shows its solidarity and with the general cause of humanity. It shows that you and the stakeholder are collectively working towards similar goals in a global and heroic way, and that you are part of their mission. Lastly, the third audience that can benefit is the commission itself. When we were researching, it was difficult to track GEC's collective work in an organized fashion or in a single place. However, the SDGs can seamlessly be integrated into your work now by simplifying and organizing everyone's efforts in one system of thinking. This shows how any given GEC initiative can map out to one or more SDGs and how multiple SDGs are involved in addressing one or more stresses or shocks, like we mentioned before. Additionally, labeling your work to the goal you target can reveal new partnership opportunities through finding commonalities. During the VLR process alone this summer, like Priya mentioned, roundtable discussion provided a forum for department, commissions, authority employees to talk about their projects and programs and how they led to the SDGs. And actually within those conversations, employees actually ended up following up with one another and overall increased collaboration. Once initiatives have been categorized, you will also have a common language to increase buy-in from other members of city personnel, including city council members, boards, other commissions, and authorities who have categorized their work with the SDGs. This will prevent contradictory efforts and similar work being done twice. And we're definitely not recommending you to change your initiatives, but we're asking you to think and talk about the initiatives in a different way so that the commonalities could be identified. So in summary, identifying commonalities with other organizations helps prevent duplication and contradiction and promotes better coordination and outcomes. Identifying gaps or SDGs that you may not address as strongly is an opportunity to partner across sectors to exchange strengths and help each other support more SDGs. As a result, you can expand your service delivery, which increases your contribution to the good of society. To sum all of these 3 points, SDGs is basically killing 3 birds with 1 stone by maximizing communication and breaking down silos between 3 essential groups in policy.
Thank you, Amy. Now that we know the definitions and the importance of SDGs and the VLR, we need to reflect on how to make use of this data and information in step 3. So first, that involves looking at the VLR and again asking, how do you change not what you do, but how you think about it? As mentioned before, everything you do is contributing to one of these 17 goals. And so make sure your projects are categorized by the goals they support. And you can compare and contrast that information to your internal goals, to other organizations who have adopted the framework, and to the overall city level reporting done in the VLR. The next step is to consider if there are opportunities to improve your current initiatives and resource allocation, as well as potentially start new initiatives. Remember, the primary goal at the very least is not to detract from any sustainable development goal, even if you can't serve all of the goals directly. And the final step is to just go out there and do it. Execute your new and improved initiatives and really take advantage of new partnerships. If everyone can frame their work in the context of SDGs, like Amy said, this creates a common language that Pittsburgh can use to communicate across sectors to maximize efficiency. Now, if you don't believe us, just know that adopting the SDGs and completing the VLR is not monitoring for monitoring's sake. In fact, cities all over the world have seen the benefits. Let's just zoom in on the United States, for example. Amy's hometown of Los Angeles, California, has cataloged its efforts by relevant SDGs and completed its first VLR. The city then went on to make an online dashboard that makes public its overall effort for each and every goal. Framing city work through the Sustainable Development Goals helped create buy-in from other partners and stakeholders who believe in those same overarching goals that specific initiatives applied to. This increased capacity for project execution and has already led to faster completion of 9 projects for the city. This leads us to our 4th step, monitoring and evaluating the ongoing and new actions taken in step 3. The good news is that many tools already exist and are being further developed so that everyone can speak the same language. And we have options. For example, we could replicate the digital structures created in Los Angeles. We can build upon the index created to assess over 100 US cities just last year by the United Nations Sustainable Development Network. We don't even have to look too far beyond the Pittsburgh region itself, where powerful digital tools are being collaboratively developed. In short, Pittsburgh has the talent, the technology, and collaboration potential to be a leader among cities of data. We have the tools, and as public servants get on board, especially the Gender Equity Commission, these tools can be tested, chosen, and used annually for the best decision-making and budgeting to address Pittsburgh's shocks and stresses now and in the future.
So to recap, we recognize that there were some limitations this year, so we want to make next year's even better. This is where the Gender Equity Commission comes in. With your stamp of approval and your explicit engagement moving forward, we can make next year's VLR more robust, more impactful, and create better engagement with your constituents and Pittsburghers as a whole. We hope to continue the conversation about how relevant this framework could be applied to the Gender Equity Commission, and we are grateful to have worked with Grant Irvin, Rebecca Kernan, and Brooke Williams, and everyone in the Sustainability and Resilience Division team. If we can be helpful to you all, please let us know. Thank you.
Please let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Priya. Oh, there we go. Now I can see everybody's face. Thank you so much for that presentation on the Sustainable Development Goals. I know these are terrifically important, not only as goal number 5, gender equity, but every single one of the Sustainable Development Goals themselves is gendered. And I know that Anu has done some terrific work and has presented on how all of those goals themselves are gendered. So I think that this work really, really complements what the Gender Equity Commission is doing. We really.
If I could just add to that really fast, just we, this presentation reflects the way to really try and institutionalize in city departments having consistency, and the way that I think the Gender Equity Commission can work in the same way is when we talk about data and encouraging disaggregated data collection in a consistent way, that we might think of this as one of the formats that we would try and work at departments. So I think the strategic planning / 5-year planning committee, city departments committee, I think they're the ones who are really going to pick up the ball from here. So thank you, Priya and Amy.
I agree.
Thank
you so much. We're going to have to sort of rush right along to the rest of the business of our meeting. For the rest of you who are with us, we're going to skip along very quickly. But again, Amy, Priya, thank you so much for being with us. And Rick, thank you very much for working with the Coro Fellows. That's terrific. Okay, for those of you who are following along in our agenda, we are actually now at our administrative portion of the meeting, which normally is right at the top of the hour. Anu, you are next up with your executive director's report. So I'm going to turn the floor over for like 30-second report.
Yes, I just want to say, so what I'm focusing on, and commissioners work really hard, and of course, working with city government, our task is to make recommendations for long-term sustainable change. I really appreciate the commissioner questions for the mayor and the chief, because they're right on the money, I think, about what should we be focusing on, what can we bring our research and your expertise to bear on. And so I've been really trying to make sure that what the committees are recommending, that I see through the logistics and the finalizing. So it's a week later than I'd hoped, but our RFP for community-based research on gender equity in Pittsburgh was published at 2 p.m. I was hoping to have it earlier. I'll be sending you an email later this week. There are a few more things, including dates for a retreat. I'll try and put those all in one email, but please, 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 please share that as broadly as you can. We want as many people, especially diverse communities, especially communities of Black Pittsburghers, especially communities of Black Pittsburgh women and femmes, to know about this, to participate. Next Tuesday at 1 p.m., OMB has scheduled a pre-conference where people can ask questions. They can also submit questions via email to the city until the 29th. I will send this all to you in an email, but spread it in your social media and your networks. Make sure everyone knows about it, because we want everyone in the city who's interested to have a chance to participate. So that's the most exciting news. Similarly, with the Workforce Equity Committee, you'll hear the committee reports, so I won't go into detail, but that I think the work is happening really well, where commissioners are coming together, brainstorming, coming to consensus, giving me directives, and then sometimes I have to report back that I can't make something work. It's not within the purview of the city, or it's not possible right now. ideally, sometimes I can say, yes, an RFP is done. So I want to thank the committees for all of the incredibly hard work you've been doing. And I'm going to leave it at that so that I can give more time. My executive director report, if you get a chance, I try to put as much detail in there as possible. Please feel free to email me at any time and say, I want to hear more about that meeting. I try and put in detail so you can always ask or connect things, or if you make a connection that I haven't. So please just reach out to me if you have any thoughts. And thank you all for your hard work leading to the RFP. Yay!
Fantastic. Thank you, Anu. Yeah, and I really do encourage everybody to read Anu's reports when she sends them. She's including a lot of information about meetings that she's having, presentations that she's given. So I know sometimes we have questions about how we're being represented in the community, and Anu's not trying to hide any of that from us. It's in there. So please do read her report. I know you get a lot of information from us every month, but that one's really helpful. Similarly, over on the executive committee side of things, I will just take about 25 seconds to let you know that we struggled with the agenda for today because we knew we were going to have a lot packed into it. The executive committee really is trying to streamline these meetings. We did want to let you know that we had a brief conversation about how to put new business back into the agenda. We're going to be talking about that some more in the executive committee. We just want to make sure that there's an opportunity for all of you to bring new business to the floor. But should you ever have things that you want to have discussed that are not within a committee structure, you can always let somebody on the executive committee, let myself, let Anu know, and we can always build that into an agenda. So we recognize that we're not giving a lot of time at the end of our agendas right now to new business. We don't want to give that short shrift. So if you've got things that you think belong there, just give us a heads up. The other thing we talked about really quickly, this is your group that often talks about policy and process issues. We just took another look at our media and speaker request process. This is something that we all had talked about back in June, but since we have so many new commissioners joining us, we just wanted to remind you, we actually have a process. We got it in writing. We sent you a link to a document. Take a look at that, because if you are getting asked to speak, like I know that Morgan was just asked to speak as a commissioner, right? If you're getting requests to be a speaker and you're being asked to speak on a panel or to a reporter on behalf of the commission, of course you can always speak as yourself. We never interfere with that. But if you're being asked to speak as a commissioner, take a look at that document. It'll guide you in terms of how we handle those speaking requests. So that's all in writing, and it's in your Google folder. Check out the Google folders. They're so well organized, and you've got them like subfolders within subfolders within subfolders. And those, you should have access to all of those. All right, moving along. And again, committee chairs, thank you for your patience and flexibility today. Sarah, the treasurer reports next.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm just going to call folks' attention to Anu's executive director report where she mentions the operating budget for City of Pittsburgh. As folks know, we approved our recommendations for what the GEC would submit, and they were shared with the city. The city is now in that deliberation process of the budget, and Anu offers a link on her report where you can be involved in that process. So I encourage you to check that out, and hopefully we'll receive some continued support in 2021.
Thanks, Sarah. So there's nothing we need to do at this time. Just check out the link.
No, there is one financial item, but it's a workforce equity item. So I'll talk about it when I put that hat on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any questions for Sarah about finance related things? I'm obviously not trying to rush us, but I'm rushing us at the same time. I'm doing both. Governance and Leadership Development Committee, before I hand this over to Sabrina, I do have to let you know, I spoke with Sabrina about this, and I let the executive committee know as well. They have sort of the unenviable task of having to put together a slate to run for executive committee, and that slate has to be presented in December so that we can all vote on it in January. And I did let folks know already that I will not be running for chair again. So one of the things that our governance committee has to do is reach out to all of you and see if any of you might be willing to serve in this role. I've been absolutely thrilled and honored and humbled to be in this role. This is actually my third year, 2.5 years into this. I'm not going anywhere. As long as Mayor Peduto continues to allow me to serve on the commission, I will still be on the commission. But it's very healthy to have leadership transition. So I do want to make sure that we are regularly turning over this chair position. And I will be here to assist with that transition. And I'm absolutely thrilled to do that. But I wanted to hand it over to Sabrina, who's going to talk about how we will be putting together a slate, among other things.
More arm twisting. I hope not, right? Isn't that how we started? No, certainly. I want to just say, Jessie and I talked quite a bit about how much work and effort she's put into getting our commission to where we are. And while I understand why she doesn't want to continue as chair, we are forever thankful for all that hard work that you've done. With regard to putting forth a slate, some of you who were on the commission the first time know that the nominating committee did make phone calls to folks, to all commissioners, to discuss with them whether or not they had an interest in sitting in or running for one of those officer positions for the executive committee. So we will take on that task again, and we will be in touch with you. But what was helpful at the time was that if you were interested, and certainly if you know now, but if you've thought about it and that's something that you wanted to pursue, if you could reach out to me. So I will have ask Anu if it's possible to share my email address with everyone so that they could connect with me if that is something that they want to do. Remember that the positions that would be opening would be the chair position, that we have 2 vice chair positions, the secretary position, and the treasurer position. And certainly someone who's sitting in that position can rerun for that as well. So we will have a slate ready to go by December, and then we will vote on it, and those terms will begin in January. So that's that transition that we need to make, and I think we will all be excited about that.
You said chair. I just wanted to make sure I got it. Chair, secretary, and first vice chair. Is that what you said were the open positions?
I thought it was
All
the positions are open. They all have the same terms, so it would be every
Thank
position.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I was trying to take notes. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate that, Anu. Thank you for double checking.
Can I ask, did you say the terms are 2 years or?
They're 1 year.
They're 1 year, okay.
That's a very good question. So please, anyone who's interested, please let me know, but I will be reaching out, or another member of our committee would be reaching out to you to talk about opportunities for that. I do have 2 other things to quickly report on, Jessie, as part of the Governance and Leadership Committee. And I wanted to thank my committee members, Lee Fogarty, Amanda Nietrauer, and Jaleesa, who I don't think is on here today, for all of their hard work that they have done with planning it for the retreat. We have reached out to Elise Pinchback, who I know that many of you on this call are familiar with, about running the retreat. And originally, if you recall, we originally talked about doing a retreat on 2 parts. And she is able to cover both of those topics for us, which is a real benefit to the commission. So she has provided, and I can share with you later for time and efficiency, I can put in an email her background. But what we're also going to submit to you are dates that she's available to hold those retreats, which are in November. So just briefly, they're 11th, 12th, 18th, and 19th. And Anu has been helpful and willing to send out a doodle poll, but we would just ask that you complete that doodle poll by the end of the week so that we can figure out what dates work best, and then we can secure those and get our retreat scheduled and ready to go. And then the last thing has to do with our job descriptions for our executive committee. There was, I think, some technical difficulties on this, but it actually worked out because we don't have the time to work on that today. We're going to be sending them out again to every commissioner. This is a draft. It's not a final version. It is meant for us to work on. And actually, and it's important that we get these in place so folks who are running for these positions know exactly what will be expected of them should they take over And Jesse, I was just wondering, we used to we have had opportunities to do work in the hour prior to our public meeting. And I wondered if it made sense if we could set aside maybe 30 minutes prior to our November meeting to work on those job descriptions, if that was acceptable to the commission.
Yeah, we've had working sessions before. We can certainly do that. I think that's a great request, and the executive committee can schedule that. But it's good to know now if that's a request in advance of the November, particularly if we're trying to schedule some other things in November. So
sure, yeah. So if that would work with everybody, we'd like about 30 minutes of a working session prior to our 2:30 meeting to do that. And we'll send that out with plenty of time for everyone to be able to look at it and come to that session with thoughts and ideas. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Sabrina. Any questions for Sabrina for our Governance and Leadership Development Committee? Allison's got her hand up.
As far as the retreat goes, when you said there are some dates, how long is the blocks of time?
It would be two. No, that's a great question. It would be 2 separate days, and each block of time would be 1.5 hours. We thought about trying to do it all together, but we thought that would create too much Zoom fatigue. So we're trying to break it up a bit.
Okay, thank you.
So all that will be in a doodle poll. Read your email. I guess that's the bottom line.
Yep.
Don't ignore your
I'll
email.
get that over to you anew to send out to the group. So thanks very much.
Thank you. And just, I'm sorry that all of these things are clustering together, but you'll get a lot of information heavy emails from the Gender Equity Commission this week.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Any other questions before we jump onto Morgan and our formerly known City Department Analysis Committee? It sounds like the artist formerly known as Prince. We're going to have to come up with a symbol or something for our name.
Well, you know me, I'm an artist, so I'm happy to come up with a logo. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to make this an elevator spiel about our committee, but it's essentially a temperature read about where we're headed. And so we had a really robust conversation about, where we would like to go. And, we're thinking about what we were designed to do with the ordinance, but also reality with COVID and just life, right? So we already know that our purpose is to do a gendered analysis of city departments, and then from there, identify and develop a departmental action plan. And then from there, think about some policy recommendations. But what does that really look like? And it sounds kind of overwhelming altogether, since, every department has different interactions with the community, the people that they serve, and they just serve different purposes, right? So Jesse created this wonderful document that I don't think I'll have enough time to share with you all today, but maybe you can put it in the heavy information blast email for everybody. But it was just a perfect way to conceptualize how we're going to operationalize what we're going to do. And so when we kind of zone out and think about this work with a bird's eye view, we kind of broke it down into 3 buckets. So I honestly think that these buckets are going to turn into a melting pot because it's kind of a chicken and egg situation and they're all interchangeable. But the first thing we obviously need to do is embed our analyses in city departments. So we have a possible opportunity with Carnegie Mellon to choose a department or an area that I wish we had more time to talk about today with you all, but to kind of think about what areas or what departments we'd like to ask questions. And of course, this isn't to put departments on blast, right? It's to kind of think of a temperature read and a baseline. And it especially goes back to the point that Amanda and the mayor spoke of earlier, that, these are entities of power and decision-making power in the city, and they have, implications with who they serve. So this is just for us to really think about, what does it look like in a gendered lens? What are the employment practices? What are the operations? So that we can think about a strategic and sustainable action plan moving forward. And then the next kind of bucket is to think about the strategic plan looking ahead. And so again, we have all these tools under our belt: our policy recommendations, the mayor's response, our gender equity report. We have all of these tools under our belt to really be strategic about an action plan. And then we also have the Gender Analysis Committee, which will help us think about all of the region and all of the city, and the intersectional needs, especially as we focus and hone in on our Black women and those who are most impacted by disparities. And then the last part is the policy recommendations. So obviously, throughout all this analysis, we're going to come up with different policy recommendations for our action plans for every department, but this will also have implications of the city. So it's kind of like two sides of the same coin. Another really interesting thing about this committee is that we obviously know in order to have sustainable and robust change, we have to move with the tides, right? We can't have stagnant things that looked good 3 years ago. So for all of you in your work, and for example, the Crown Act is an incredible example of this. If there are policy recommendations that you have encountered, run it through this committee, because we can present that, as a whole commission, and then have it for the city's policy analysts to review. So it's just a continuous stream of progress. So with all that being said, given that our ordinance continuously talks about action plans, equity, we are thinking to call this committee, the drum roll, Equity Action Planning Committee. So if any of you have any other creative ideas or buzzwords you'd like to put in, or if we could put it to vote today, I'd be so glad, so that way I don't have to put fancy adjectives before the committee meetings on my Google Calendar. So, Jesse, do you have any thoughts on that? Did I miss anything?
That was beautiful.
Okay.
Coming up with the name so that we can actually move. Otherwise, we're going to make Morgan draw a symbol. I mean, it's just going to be an art project.
Right. Which I'm fine. Visuals can help compel a message. But I'd like to put forth a vote for changing the name of the City Department Analysis Committee, which then turned into the 5-year Plan Committee, into the Equity Action Planning Committee.
Equity Action Planning Committee. All right, that was, Morgan has put forward a motion. Is there a second on that motion?
I second.
I'll second the motion.
2 seconds. Any
Go ahead,
discussion for this? This would be renaming. I mean, this is a formality. We don't normally vote on names of committees, but this is actually, an important in terms of framing our thinking about what the work of this committee is doing. And Morgan's really been leading the charge on helping us think about the steps, right, and how to do this work. This is all comes right out of the ordinance. So she's going to share a document that we have been working on, and we had a terrific meeting of the minds yesterday to think through this. So any questions, discussion on the name? Names are important. Okay, we'll bring it to a vote then. All in favor of the name, which really is focusing our work, Equity Action Planning Committee. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right, great. That helps us focus the work a little bit. And we will send you a copy of that document. I know we're asking you to read a lot of documents and things on your own. Please, please, please do, set aside some time to do that. I know you're all volunteers and we so appreciate your time and effort. We've tried to make this as streamlined as possible. Morgan, back to you. Anything else that you need the commission to look at this time?
No, that'll do it. I think the document you created was beautiful. I really recommend all of you to look through it because it helped me put this Pac-Man maze into some steps forward into my head. So thank you, Jesse.
Absolutely. All right, then moving on to our next committee. Thank you so much, Morgan, for your leadership there. Sharon, are you ready to talk to us about the gender analysis?
Yes, I am. And mine will be very, very quick because Anu certainly introduced that we are done. We're getting ready to, not getting ready, but it is ready to go out. And I wanted to just thank the committee, which is Lee and Sarah Schultz and, Jesse and Anu, just for being there and for helping out. It was a heavy lift, but we did it. And I want to just say I'm very grateful to both Sarah and Lee because I'm new and they made it so easy. Because I can remember when I first opened it and I thought, what in the world? And then And then Sarah and New, everybody started putting things in and putting in the perspective. And I thought, this is great. So we got it done. I just want to reiterate what Anu asked, and that is that you get the word out to people. And we want to make sure that it gets, that it goes into the inner crevices of where people live, where people work, where people worship, where people play. We just want to make sure that this gets out to everybody. And if you need any support with that, or if you want to send me a list, do whatever it takes. But we want this to get out to everybody. And so that's really all I wanted to say. It's time to, I think Morgan talked about action. It's time for action now, and that's to get that word out, get people engaged, and hoping that we have just a groundswell of applicants and people who we can really sit down and see who will be the very best folks to do this work. And so, yeah, thank you so much. And that's all, Jesse. I'm good. I'm just so excited. We're done, and it's great.
It's fantastic. Thank you to this committee. Thank you, Anu, for your shepherding and getting this through.
Yes.
Quickly,
Yes.
we know how quick this was in the grand scheme of things. Any questions for Sharon, for the committee? I assume, Anu, that we will have links to something or things that we can send out or put in your social media.
Great.
Yes, and like I said, it was just published at 2, so I knowing that I would have to send an email, but I will send links, I will send attachments, and I might even send you like a blurb, or if I know who you are on Facebook or something like that, or if you're willing to, I'll include something that you can just cut and paste into social media. I, of course, will be sending it out on every channel. There'll be a special issue of the newsletter. And so continue to encourage your friends to get the newsletter. And yeah, so we'll just be blasting it, and I'll also be working with the communications team to get it out.
Great. Okay, that's the end of my report, Jesse. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're so welcome.
This is so exciting. And again, in encouraging you all to read all the things you're going to get into your mailbox, one of the things that the Equity Action Planning Committee has been talking about is the relationship between that work and Sharon's committee's work. So, how does this gender analysis that we're all performing, collectively through this committee's leadership, what's the relationship of that work out in the community and that analysis to the city departments that we're taking a look at? So
sure,
kind of mapped a little bit of that thinking in this document that we'll share with you, but that's one of the questions that we had. So just know that we've had some of that conversation. Take a look at that document. That conversation in there. That's important to understand that these are sort of separate processes, but that they do relate. All right, no other questions for Sharon. We're getting back on time track here. Good work, gang. Handing it over to Sarah now for the Workforce Equity Committee.
Thank you, Jesse. I have 3 items to share with folks this afternoon regarding the work of the Workforce Equity Committee. The first is that, very exciting, we are launching our 2 workforce equity initiatives with a focus on the AAUW Work Smart initiative. We are holding November 18th as the date for that launch. So I know that was mentioned as one of the possible dates for our retreat. So there may be a little bit of a conflict there. So right now, what we're hoping to do is have a virtual launch with some invited speakers, and we can share more details on that. We have a city planning meeting this Friday. So after that meeting, we can share out more details. But the second item that is connected to this is that in addition to launching our workforce equity initiatives on that date, publicly, we also want to announce the recognition of November as what we are proposing to call Pittsburgh Women's Pay Equity Month. And the messaging would be around 2 key points. Number 1, that it currently, according to the data from our report from last year's Pittsburgh's Inequality Across Gender and Race report, it takes 11 months for Black women to achieve pay parity to what white men achieved the year prior, which is heinous. It's ridiculous. So that's one aspect of this. And in fact, the second message being that with that pay parity moment, it's actually marks then when all women in the city of Pittsburgh have achieved pay parity with what white men earned the prior year. So those are the two key messages that we would be putting out with this. So for that reason, it is the committee's recommendation to call it Pittsburgh Women's Pay Equity Month, but we wanted to present that to you today just to give everyone a chance to give some feedback. So my question around this second issue is, is anyone opposed, or does anyone have concerns to our dubbing November Pittsburgh Women's Pay Equity Month?
I'm looking around for any hands or facial expressions. And recall that this group took a look at that proposal back in February and approved that as a month to recognize this, but that this committee has been discussing what specifically to call it and how to message it. So thank you, Sarah, and this group for having that conversation.
Great. Okay.
I see no concerns. Back to you.
Okay, all right. Then the third and final item is an action request for a vote. We have received a proposed contract from Nth Party to serve as the third-party data management provider for our Pittsburgh Workforce Equity Commitment Initiative. And as a brief reminder, that initiative is focused on systemic change and promoting women's workforce equity with companies, with businesses. So our goal is to form a council and then to also launch this commitment where employers pledge to commit to closing the gender pay gap, to exploring other aspects of gender-based and race-based workforce inequities. And as part of that, to participate in data collection of confidential, disaggregated and anonymous data collection of their employees' demographics and wage compensation data every 2 years. And so our request with Nth Party, they are the team that created the system that the city of Boston has been using for the past several years. They originally out of Boston University and then formed a small business in order to assist other cities and other entities with replicating this data process. So I will share my screen very briefly so folks can see. Are folks able to see the statement of work? Okay, so the table is where to focus your attention. I'm happy to share the document in full. It's very brief, but basically what they're saying is that this would be in essence a year-long contract that it would be, they had originally quoted us a cost of $10,000, which we included in our budget for this year. And they shared that there are some additional fees, but they're subsidizing those fees with grants. So the cost to the Gender Equity Commission would be for the full year, $10,000. The services that it would include, as you can see, is a planning and training, helping us create the data form that we will be using. And as a quick reminder, it would be a combination of the EEO1, the EEOC1 form, as well as pulling questions from the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index. So we would be combining some of those together. We'll be asking folks for some help with that. But this would be around planning that out, creating that form, training, providing training to us and to employers for how to submit their data, providing technical assistance, assisting with creating the process of disaggregation and analysis, and again, just any follow-up services that we would need for the full year. Do folks have any questions around what they are offering with this?
I see Allison's hand. I can't see everybody in this mode with the screen shared, but Allison, go ahead. And if anybody else has a question, you can unmute and yell.
Yeah, I apologize since I'm sure this has been discussed at prior meetings to my joining. So this is really a vehicle to show us or the city of Pittsburgh how to collect this data.
And to also, yes, and to provide a storage solution. So it is important that it not be a government entity that received this data. So they offer a secure system by which employers can anonymously submit the data. They will disaggregate it, and then it gets sent once it has been de-identified.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Sarah?
Yes. Do we have a say in how the data will be collected and disaggregated?
Yes, we do. They have some recommendations, but they are, and that's something that I would like to speak with commissioners with at a later time, soon-ish, would be the exact questions that we want, looking at what Boston used, but how do we adjust it for what we are looking to do? And then they would assist us with converting that into, it's a web-based process that they use for employers to submit data. So they would help us with that whole process of creating it, collecting the data, and then how it is reported out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the only reason why I mentioned is the presentation of before with our core fellows in regards to the SDGs, and specifically goal number 5, which is gender equity, and goal number 8, which is decent work.
Right.
And then also goal number 10, inequalities. So I don't know if you had an opportunity to kind of look at some of those frameworks from the SDGs. We could send that information to you as we kind of look at the data. So we won't have all these different frameworks collecting stuff disaggregated, and it's not comprehensive. So that's the only concern that I would have. Well, not really a concern, but just something as we're kind of developing things, how do we do it comprehensive that it could work for multiple frameworks and people?
I agree. So can I add to that real quick, Sarah?
Sure.
So the reason why we get the data and we do it every 2 years is, number one, to track the progress. So to your point, Rick, this is not a one-off. This would be information that, besides assisting employers with seeing how well collectively the city of Pittsburgh is doing to close the gender wage gap, it's also information that we would use similar to the report that we put out for anything and everything that we need it for. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to have a company that can house this information securely, make sure that it's anonymous and cannot be traced back to the individuals that put the information out, et cetera. So, we as a collective will have, access to the data and to the report and to the findings. And so we definitely want this to be something that is complementary to and can be used by, et cetera, for, our purposes. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. So the motion that I'm putting before the commission today is to approve the use of $10,000 from the $50,000 that was budgeted for workforce equity in 2020 to use $10,000 towards procuring this contract.
So we've got a motion on the table from Sarah. Is there a second for this motion? I see Sharon's hand up.
I second.
Any further discussion of the motion? We're voting to approve the contract, which you should still be able to see on your screen. Details about that. Any further questions or discussion? All right, then moving that motion to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstains? No abstentions. Okay, that motion carries. Thank you again, Sarah, Amanda, committee, for your work on that project.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Now we can see everybody again. It's always come back together after a screen share, isn't it?
I'll just make a quick request to the committee. I'm waiting on vendor letters. So if you can nudge your committee member and say thank you all very much, and I'll keep processing the paperwork on my end. Thanks.
Thank you, Adu. That concludes the Workforce Equity Report.
Thank you very, very much. And we'll look for some more updates about what you need from us for November for our participation in November activities. I know you've got a planning meeting coming up about that soon. We are almost back on track with our time. I do appreciate your patience. We may just run a moment or two over. I see that we've got Jordan with us. Jordan, are you giving us a policy update today?
I feel like the mayor and Chief Gilman did a really thorough job covering most of what we're doing. The one thing they didn't mention was the appointments project. We are launching next month, which is really exciting, and we're speaking with Gwen's Girls, the Executive Women's Council as well. So thank you, Commissioner Fogarty, for that recommendation. And Jesse with the Chatham Women's Institute. So we're really looking forward to getting that off the ground. Just another initiative that is incredibly important in the work that we're doing in our office that happens to align with the work that the commission is doing. But other than that, the Crown Act passed today, which is pretty exciting. We are working with that actually like 180 plus page Word document of changes to the city code. It is, I know Chief Gilman said 90, but it's more like 180, 200 pages. But
it is bright and mind-numbing at times, and I'm just helping out on the edges here.
It is, the changes were very tedious, but the work is incredibly important. And so we obviously had no issue going through the code and making those incredibly, incredibly important changes. So we're looking forward to that being introduced to council very soon. I think that's just about it. Like I said, they covered everything that I was going to say. So.
And Jordan, to be clear, like you're changing where language may use male pronouns, for instance, to refer to all people, that kind of example. So you're scrubbing all of the city.
Everything. Yes. So
that's a huge project and incredibly powerful. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Lee's got a question. Go ahead, Lee.
Okay, I just wanted to thank you, Jordan, for following through with Executive Women's Council. They are so pleased at being involved in this, and it really justified all of the work that they've done over these years. So I appreciate how quickly you got to them, and I heard about it right away. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. As you mentioned, they've been doing the work, so it's important that we acknowledge that and bring them into the work that we're doing currently. So, yeah.
Other questions for Jordan? I feel like we should return you to your work. This is such an important project. And thank you so much for the Crown Act. That's something that this group discussed briefly, goodness, like 2 years ago, I think. So really exciting to see some of this work come to fruition. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. If there's nothing else on policy that we should be thinking about, today's been a big policy day. We are on number 8 on the agenda, new business and action requests. We do have some time to bring anything from the floor if anybody has anything new that you'd like to discuss. This is that part of the meeting I was talking about that always get pushed to the end, and I worry that we don't have enough time for new business. Lee, go ahead.
Well, this is actually, we've been talking about the SDGs, and there is in November, starting November 18th, there's the 16 days of activism that the UN and the SDG committees have been working on, and it's against violence against women internationally. It ends on December 10th, and I just wanted to bring it up in terms of having some way that we might make a statement about this. Zonta, the organization I belong to, does about daily things with this, putting things out almost every day about things. But one of the suggestions was from internationally came is if we could get the mayor to make a proclamation about the 16 days of activism and how important it is. So I don't know if that's something you think, a new Jesse, that we could do, or.
Could we do it through the action request process? Because then you, Lee, as the suggesting party, would collect the information and then pass it my way with your recommendation, and then I
Sure.
would figure out with Jordan and Ella how we can make that work. Yeah. So
That'd be fine. If that's,
yeah, and I'll send
everybody's
that
okay
in,
with that.
in my information-heavy emails. I'll send so any commissioner, when something like this comes up that you think the commission should do, and that request comes to me, so I would discuss it with the chair, and it might be as simple as saying, oh yeah, let's just do this, or it might be something we could partner with other groups if they're doing things like, I'll talk to Rick about this particular one. Thank you, Lee, that's
Okay,
great.
that sounds great. And it's a really important thing that the UN is really encouraging us. Oops. I think it fits just with what we've been talking about today and should be easier than anything else we're doing.
And Lee, if you have that information from the UN, because we haven't set up the press conference yet for our VLR submission at the end of the month. I mean, we're being very ambitious to hope that it will be next week, because next week is the end of the month, but it may be delayed after the election. So there's conversation back and forth about that. Should we do it next week or should we wait? So we want participation from the UN, because we're submitting this VLR to them to be the third city in the United States to do that. So it's very significant. So maybe
yeah, I'll get that out to you tomorrow, Rick.
About that. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Lee. And this is a really good example, as Anu just said, of how we can use our action request process. You know, we're not trying to use processes to bog down our work. We're trying to use processes to expedite our work. These are all things that we've talked about collectively, and I think that they're working really well and great timing. So thank you so much, Lee. That's a wonderful example. And we're all going to be walking around saying SDG number 5, SDG.
Which is gender equality compared to equity. Just so we're being a little more specific here. Jesse, I don't know if you're going to call for public comments. I do have one.
Was just going to turn it over to you, Anu. I'm glad we have a public comment. Go ahead.
This is from Marcia Bandies, who everyone will know as one of our staunch advocates, Pittsburgh for CDAW with Lee, the steering committee. She wanted to follow up on something that the mayor said about healthcare, and just to remind us that we can't stop with pregnancy and birth when we're talking about infant and maternal health, that we need to continue the care of both the mother and infant through the first year. So she just wanted it on the record that, you know, we can't think of these things as, if we just look at pregnancy through birth, that will not have the impact that we need. Marcia shared with us. So I'm glad to share that with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anu. Thank you, Marcia. Was that the only comment, Anu?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. We are right at the end of our time. We did a great job catching up. Thanks for everyone for your speediness in speaking and getting right to the business. Appreciate everybody today. Our next meeting is on November 17th from 2:30 to 4:30. We will be online once again. The only thing we didn't collect today were action items. That's something that Kalani used to do, and we didn't want to put that burden on our brand new interim secretary. But starting again next month, if we have action items, we do stick those here at the end of the meeting. I think most of today's action items are on Anu, because she's got like 100 emails that she's got to send out.
I'm going to send you all one email. Try and make it as clear as possible. Be patient with me. I'll try and make it really user friendly. I want to thank Jesse for getting us through this meeting. You know, with just a couple minutes over, there was a lot to do. And also thank you, Allison, for stepping up as secretary. It really, you all are just amazing and supportive people, and that's really wonderful.
Fantastic.
Lee, can I just ask that, Sarah, Amanda, I sent you both talking about the times, so if you can get back to me with that so that we can get, well, when we send it out with the new, we'll know what times we have available.
I replied to you, Leo. I did. I'm going to ask on Friday if there's any updates, and yes, and as soon as I have scheduling updates, we will pass them on.
Perfect, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Lots of action items here. Check your emails, attend all those meetings. All right, thank you, everyone. I just need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Right. We are adjourned. See you all. Thank